Live from London, this is Global Business.
Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Robin Dwyer.
And I'm Juliette Byrne. Our top stories. In a sticky spot, the IMF's assessment of the global economy as world trade improves, but inflation remains a problem.
US markets rally as confidence grows that a rate cut could be coming soon.
US Republicans give Donald Trump a rapturous welcome just days after he survived an assassination attempt.
And French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal offers to resign again, but will stay on for the time being amid political deadlock. The International Monetary Fund has described the global economy as being in a sticky spot as world trade improves, but inflation isn't falling fast enough and could stay higher for longer.
In its latest World Economic Outlook, the IMF says it expects global growth to remain stable at 3.2% this year and 3.3% next year. But it says growth among advanced economies is expected to align with US growth revised down to 2.6% this year, slowing further to 1.9% next year. Now, in the euro area, the IMF says activity has turned a corner. Its forecast for this year is revised up slightly, 0.9%, with stronger consumption expected to push that up to 1.5% in 2025. But it points out that weak manufacturing means growth in Germany will be more sluggish. The IMF says the Japanese economy will grow slightly less than previously predicted, down from 0.9% to 0.7% this year. That's because of supply disruptions and weak investment. It is a more positive picture in developing economies, where growth has been revised up. China, for example, is expected to grow 5% this year, and that's on the back of stronger exports. India is also expected to grow up 7% this year, and that's partly because it improved private consumption in rural areas. Well, Petya Kerber-Brooks is Deputy Director at the International Monetary Fund.
What's very clear is that emerging Asia remains, by and large, the growth engine for the global economy. The growth rates that we're expecting from India and China are definitely contributing positively to these overall figures that you're seeing. It's also important to mention that inflation, in a way, has not been as big of an issue in that region as it has been in others. So I think that is helping. But this is not to say that there are no issues there. There are clearly risks, including in China, including the importance of tackling some of the problems there in the property sector. The increase in trade tensions and also in protectionist in industrial policy measures is something that we have observed over the past year, and it's been very worrisome. So far, the impact on trade, as measured as trade in relation to global output, that has been stable. And actually, we expect trade this year to grow in line with global activity. But if we look deeper behind those overall numbers, what we see is an increase in the trade within blocs, within politically aligned blocs, and a decrease in trade across blocs. So what this tells us is that if these tensions were to continue, and if there were further escalation, then at some point we will see an impact on trade, and this is something that we are clearly worried about, and we are calling on all countries involved to try to resolve this in a multilateral way rather than through unilateral measures.
The head of the US Federal Reserve says he's increasingly confident that inflation is heading towards a point where rate cuts are possible. Jerome Powell also says that the key target of 2% inflation is not set in stone.
We've been very clear that you wouldn't wait for inflation to get all the way down to 2%. Our test has been for the past quite some time that we wanted to have greater confidence that inflation was moving sustainably down toward our 2% target. And what increases that confidence in that is more good inflation data. And lately here, we have been getting some of that.
Let's head to Wall Street now and talk to our correspondent there, John Terrett. So, John, a busy day, busy week for earnings.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness me, it's always busy. There's always something going on here at the New York Stock Exchange, Robin and Juliet. And today, I mean, it's just buy, buy, buy. I mean, not buy, buy, I'm not going anywhere. Just buy, buy, buy. Buy stocks, that's all anybody seems to want to do. And it began really yesterday. We had a record close on the Dow on Monday, and that was because of interest rates, because of earnings, which were coming in strong, particularly from the banks, and also the Trump effect after what happened at the weekend. Now, regarding interest rates, I will tell you this. There is a sort of data point here at the Stock Exchange, which I don't use very often. They call it the calendar. And the calendar is pointing at the moment to a 100% chance of an interest rate cut in September, and most likely another one in November. So that's really all you need to know. And that follows Chairman Powell, as you heard in that clip we just played there, basically indicating that the Federal Reserve won't wait until it gets back to exactly 2% on the interest rate or inflation before it cuts interest rates. And so the market liked that very much. On top of that, Apple hit an all-time high yesterday after Morgan Stanley upgraded the stock to $273 each. Tesla was up yesterday after Elon Musk backed Trump for the win in November. Bitcoin is at the moment approaching 65,000, and that is because Trump is seen as the cryptocurrency candidate for November, and he's also going to be appearing at the biggest Bitcoin show ever. Normally it's in Miami, but they've moved it to Nashville. Now, just a footnote, I did say on yesterday's program that this was going to be in Washington, D.C. That was a no-no. I made a mistake. It is in Nashville. It'll be next week, the end of the month. So all of that is going on. On top of that, today we've got Boeing up 2% because the markets have decided that its stock is unlikely to go any further. It's now sorting out its problems, say Wall Street, so they're betting on it again. And if you take Goldman Sachs, Caterpillar, Boeing and Home Depot, they're currently responsible for 330 points on the 500 points that there are at the moment on the Dow Jones, just those four companies. Now, we had more bank earnings this morning. Bank of America up 4% after sales and net interest income was a win. Net interest income is the difference between what a bank pays out to its clients in interest and what it brings in from those accounts. It didn't work so well for Morgan Stanley, though. Their shares wobbled a bit after there was some concern about their wealth management division there, but the shares are now up 2%. And Charles Schwab, which I never mentioned Charles Schwab, but it is a big company on Wall Street, shares down 7% now. That's an awful lot. Why? Because they had fewer deposits in the last 3 months, and they also put on fewer accounts. But they will, I tell you this, still put on more than 900,000 in 3 months. So it's not bad, but it was less than Wall Street was expecting. Finally, the big one comes up on Thursday night. That's going to be Netflix after the closing bell. And right now, the Dow is up 570 points, 40,782. The S&P 500 is ahead by 21 points. That's about 0.4%. So we really are in, well, I mean, this is extraordinary, really, and I will tell you this, I think that a lot of it is actually bolstered by what happened to President Trump at the weekend and his recovery.
Clearly lots going on Wall Street then, John. Elsewhere, a famous brand is closing.
Kaspersky Labs. I know, it's a Russian company. They started in Moscow back in 1997, so that's 27 years ago, by Eugene and Natalia Kaspersky. And they actually have a base in London. They're run by a holding company at Paddington Basin, which is that beautiful area in West London around Paddington Station. There's a canal there, and they have lots of big houses and things, and I believe the company is actually based there. Now, what they do is they make antivirus software. So forget about hacks and things. They're bad enough. But on your personal computer at work and at home, every time you go to a website, that website dumps loads of cookies into your system. And what Kaspersky Labs does is they combat those cookies because they slow your system down. So they wipe them out and they manage them, all that kind of stuff. And they reckon they have 270 million customers around the world. However, Biden's just banned them because of their connections with Moscow. And so the whole company's website is being wound down now in July. After September, it'll be illegal to use them in the United States. We got a clue this was going to happen because back in 2017, the federal authorities stopped Kaspersky Labs from being on any of the Federal Reserve, or not the Federal Reserve, all federal laptops and desktops. That was back in 2017. They're using Trump-era laws to do this. Kaspersky is now shutting its doors in America. They say this is a very painful and difficult decision, particularly as we think we have real growth in this market, but they're going to go off now and concentrate in the rest of the world. Of course, there are real sanctions against the Russians because of the special operation in Ukraine, and no one really quite knows how the economy in Russia is getting on and how Kaspersky will survive without this huge market that is the United States. Robin?
John, thank you very much. Our correspondent John Terrett in New York.
Well, former US President Donald Trump has made a triumphant return to the public eye at the Republican National Convention, just 2 days after surviving an assassination attempt. Sporting a bandage where a bullet grazed his right ear, he received a rapturous welcome from thousands of supporters in Milwaukee, where he was officially confirmed as the Republican nominee for president. He's also announced Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his vice presidential running mate. Our correspondent Hendrik Sybrandy is at that Republican convention in Milwaukee. Great to see you, Hendrik. Now, although Trump didn't actually speak, his appearance was clearly the highlight of the opening day.
Well, it absolutely was. Good morning from Milwaukee. Former President Trump entered the Fiserv Forum here behind me the middle of last evening, Monday evening here, too, as you said, rapturous applause. You mentioned the bandage on his right ear. It's still clearly visible from the shooting over the weekend. He raised his fist as he came in, much as he did moments after the shooting in the state of Pennsylvania. Clearly, you know, the delegates here hold him in extremely high regard, and they were very happy to see him. We spoke to a couple of delegates who say that they are glad that he has survived this. This seems to have turned him a little bit more contemplative, you might say, at least outwardly, made him think a little bit how close he came to dying over the weekend. He said this brush with death has changed the way that he's going to approach his convention speech in a couple of days, that basically he had a rip-roar, as he called it, of a speech in mind and already written, and the fact that this happened on Saturday has changed his whole approach towards what he plans to say. At least he says so at this point, saying that he plans to offer a more unifying speech. At the same time, the convention here last night was extremely critical of the Democrats and of the Biden administration. The theme of yesterday's convention here was Make America Wealthy Again. There were a lot of references to inflation and the way that Biden, they say, has mismanaged the economy over the last 4 years. Today, the theme is immigration. So you can imagine what that's going to be like. Still very negative towards the incumbent president, but at least outwardly, Trump says he may present a unifying face when he addresses this hall in a couple of days.
And Hendrik, he's picked J.D. Vance as his running mate to be as vice president should he be elected as president in the elections. Well, what's the reaction to that pick been?
Well, the delegates we spoke with seem very positive on J.D. Vance. They regard him kind of as the vanguard of the MAGA movement, a much younger face of that movement as it goes forward. Vance is only 39 years old. He's the current senator from the state of Ohio. He was elected in 2022. Doesn't have a lot of national experience. He's only been in office for a couple of years, but a lot of delegates see him as holding true to a lot of the themes that Trump has spoken about: immigration, abortion, and the like. Vance may be to the right of Donald Trump at this point, although it wasn't always this way. 8 years ago, during the 2016 election, where Trump ran against Hillary Clinton, Vance was extremely critical of Donald Trump back then, called him, among other things, an idiot. He did not spare any kind of words, but obviously that has all changed now. He's fully on board the Trump train and should be a very vigorous campaigner for the former president in the election as we head to November.
Hendrik Sybrandy in Milwaukee, thank you very much.
German regulators say Deutsche Bank fell short of international accounting rules by omitting details from its 2019 financial report. The bank's accused of failing to disclose a link between $2.2 billion in deferred tax assets and historic losses in the United States. Deutsche Bank denied the accusations, saying the 2019 report fully complied with international accounting standards. Shares in Hugo Boss have tumbled as it becomes the latest luxury brand to be hit by slumping sales. Fashion firms revised down its 2024 sales predictions to $4.73 billion, blaming what it calls persistent macroeconomic and geopolitical challenges. The company cited falling sales in both China and the UK as key factors. In the UK, shares in online grocer Ocado have surged 18%, boosted by revenue increases from its tech arm. The company recently upgraded its technology business, which sells warehouse robots to retailers around the world. Recent sales figures show the company was the fastest-growing UK grocer for a fifth month in a row. China plans to increase financial support for projects aimed at reducing emissions at coal power plants. Methods such as burning biomass and green ammonia are being encouraged. The first phase next year aims for a 20% cut in emissions per unit of electricity generated, with a goal of a 50% reduction by 2027. Chinese investors can now put their money in Saudi Arabian stocks with the launch of 2 exchange-traded funds in Shanghai and Shenzhen. The ETFs, which are run by China Southern Asset Management and Huatai Pine Bridge, have proved popular, with around 20,000 funds and individuals buying shares in the 7-day offer period.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Israeli strikes kill dozens more in Gaza, including at a UN-run school. There are fears the increased violence could derail fragile peace efforts.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us. And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
Why, this is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Hero.
Palestinian health officials say scores of people have been killed and dozens more injured in a wave of Israeli strikes across Gaza over the last 24 hours.
Israel's military says it's targeting Hamas fighters taking cover among civilians. The militant group says its fighters attacked Israeli forces in several locations. Israel has intensified offensive, has overshadowed delicate ceasefire talks.
Won't the world save us? It's unfair, you're all just watching us. This is so unfair, all the people getting killed. Every minute there's a new martyr. It's been 10 months. We're exhausted, we're devastated, we're extremely tired. Our patience is over. Whether it's Hamas or Israel, they both need to come to an agreement as soon as possible.
Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari is in Khan Yunis.
According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, 44 Palestinians were killed in 3 different incidents taking place in Khan Yunis area, in central Gaza, particularly in Nusayrat and in Sheikh Zayed in the Gaza North. 3 different incidences that took the life of 44 Palestinians and left others injured. And once again, a school that is run by the UNRWA is targeted. In Khan Yunis, a gathering of the people who were seeking medical care not far away from the Jordanian field hospital were targeted and injured. A house that was targeted where 2 people were killed. So ongoing escalation, increased targeting, and more Palestinians killed in a very short pace of time. And that marks the past few days where the Israeli occupation forces have declared that they have been intensifying the attacks and that they have been transiting to stage number 3 from this war, which means they're going to focus more, according to them, of course, on the targeted killing and also in the intelligence information that would lead to precise surgical intervention. But what is happening on the ground, with the number of people, Palestinian, higher than ever expected, it means that we are entering a time of just increased bombardment and random targeting of the Palestinians. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, no considerations were taken. The areas that were considered safe areas and declared as such by the Israeli occupation were targeted, and apparently the purpose of that is to keep the Palestinians scared, keep them on the move, keep them displaced, and keep them in despair.
Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been meeting Israeli officials to try and press ahead with a ceasefire deal. Our correspondent Sarah Coates is in northern Israel. Good to see you again, Sarah. Now, what has come out of Secretary Blinken's meeting with those Israeli officials?
Yes, hello again. A very direct message from Antony Blinken to Israel's Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and also the National Security Advisor Tzachi Hanegbi. Now, Blinken said to these 2 very senior ministers that the US has serious concerns about recent civilian casualties in Gaza. He said they remain unacceptably high. Now, this, of course, follows this real number of Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip over these last few days. The one that really drew the most criticism, international condemnation, was this strike on Saturday in the Al-Mawasi area, which has been designated as a humanitarian zone. Now, that strike was actually targeting a senior Hamas figure, Mohammed Deif. It is still unclear whether Deif actually did, in fact, survive this targeted strike, but certainly a lot of concern, as we've heard there from Antony Blinken, the US's top diplomat. And this meeting comes just ahead of Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, jetting out to Washington himself ahead of that congressional address on the 24th of this month.
And Sarah, what's the latest along Israel's border with Lebanon? I think that's where you are right now, isn't it?
You're certainly right. If we look just this way, the Lebanon border is about 5 or so kilometres away. There have just been some strikes, a direct hit actually on the northern town of Kiryat Shimona. That is about an 8-minute drive from where we are standing right now. We are hearing that there may potentially be a number of other rocket alerts going off right now. I can't actually see on my phone as I'm on air with you, but it's certainly a very tense situation. It is a very worrying situation. More rocket and missile fire right now. We can report into Kiryat Shimona from southern Lebanon. Still no reports on whether there have been any deaths, any injuries, but I have just seen that video myself, a direct hit on a home, and certainly very worrying. What I'm actually hearing right now are some loud booms in the distance. So this is certainly an area on edge, an area that is largely evacuated. Some 60,000 Israeli residents have been forced to stay away from their homes. This area where we are standing right now, Rosh Pina, people are allowed to be here. But as I mentioned, once again, very tense, very concerning.
Sarah Coates, along the border with Lebanon and Israel, thank you very much.
Hamas says more than 320 Palestinians have been killed or injured in Gaza over the past 2 days.
Homes in the Tel Al-Hawa neighbourhood have been destroyed, and Israeli forces have targeted a key hospital. Our correspondent Alina El-Jazji reports.
The Israeli army again bombed the Friends of the Patient hospital, destroying and burning large parts of it during its invasion in the west of Gaza City over the past few days. Palestinian civil defense crews say they recovered 5 dead people from inside the hospital's corridors after they were killed as a result of the bombing, which also caused widespread destruction to the surrounding area.
The first attack, the damage was less than damaging. This damaging, because as you see, the building was completely destroyed. The sterilization department, washing machine department, and many of the world. The building before there was just only burning. Now, I am not speaking about burning, and I am speaking about destroying of the rooms of the patient.
The hospital was also subjected to Israeli bombing in mid-February, bringing its operations to a halt. Local donor and international institutions rehabilitated the hospital, leading it to reopen in June due to the urgency of Gazans needing health care. The closure of the patient's friend's hospital especially impacts young people, given it provides specialized medical care to malnourished children.
This is the only hospital that works in the Gaza Strip and that provides care for children, because all the hospitals in the Gaza Strip are out of service, especially in the northern region. It is the only hospital that provides care for children with malnutrition in light of this difficult situation and in light of this famine in the north.
The spokesman for the Palestinian Civil Defense in Gaza, Mahmoud Basal, confirmed that dozens of charred bodies of Palestinians were also recovered from inside homes, in addition to the widespread destruction of infrastructure in the western Gaza area.
The continuation and repetition of Israeli military operation in Gaza City only leads to more destruction, losses, and displacement for thousands of Palestinians here in Gaza Strip, who is looking and hopes for end this war and this suffering. Lina Yazji, CGTN, Gaza Strip.
French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal has resigned but agreed to stay on as head of a caretaker government. President Emmanuel Macron has now accepted Attal's resignation but asked him to stay in the position with limited power until after the Paris Olympics. This is the second time that Attal has offered his resignation since his centrist party was defeated by the left-wing coalition in the snap election.
Roberta Metsola has been re-elected as President of the European Parliament, becoming the first woman to win a second term. In her acceptance speech, the MEP from Malta pledged to remain a strong supporter of Ukraine and warned against polarisation.
Polarisation in our societies has led to more confrontational politics, even political violence. The easy answers that divide our communities into us and them. We need to move beyond this zero-sum thinking that has excluded people, that turns people away. We understand that the comfort of such easy politics offers no real solutions.
Our correspondent Alex Cadier says Metsola will be presiding over a very different parliament.
Yeah, certainly very, very different parliament indeed, and she was just talking about polarisation, and the European Parliament is no exception, because more than a quarter of the MEPs in the hemicycle will be far-right or hard-right parties. Now, I make that distinction because the European Parliament is all about coalitions, all about teams of different parties from different countries working together. You have 84 MEPs from the group that includes Marine Le Pen's Rassemblement National, Viktor Orban's Fidesz party, and Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy. You also have a further right-wing party, around 25, or group, I should say, around 25 of them, which have been described as anti-migration, anti-LGBT, anti-woke, anti-Green Deal, and anti-support for Ukraine. That last issue, a crucial one, because it is one of the things that brings together the governing coalition in the European Parliament, the centre-right, centre-left, centrist parties, the Greens, the Left, and the European People's Party of Ursula von der Leyen and Roberta Metsola. They will work together to govern, but you can certainly expect those far-right parties to make it very difficult for them to do so, particularly on wedge issues. So at the moment, it seems smooth sailing for Roberta Metsola. She's back for another 2.5 years, but it will be a divisive, a fractious European Parliament for the next 5 years. On key issues, Ursula von der Leyen has said she's very clear. If you're pro-Europe, pro-Ukraine, pro-rule of law, her majority party, or I should say her leading party, will work with you. But for everything else, there are wedge issues, and this Parliament may be more divided than ever, Juliet.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of those divisions, because in a sign of that tension that you're talking about, 63 MEPs, I believe, have asked for Hungary to be stripped of its voting rights over Prime Minister Viktor Orban's trips to Moscow and to Beijing. Will that actually happen?
No, in a word, I think is what the tea leaves are saying at the moment. MEPs have done this before. It is, if nothing else, a sign of the strength of feeling for some MEPs, the anger towards Viktor Orban, not necessarily for having those trips, but for proposing peace talks with Russia on terms that simply don't work for the Ukrainians or work for the majority of European member states and European members of the European Parliament. That is the real frustration against Viktor Orban, not briefing his other leaders, speaking kind of on behalf of the European Union, even though he had no mandate to do so on those trips. So that is the frustration, the challenge. To give you some context, back in January, 120 MEPs called for Hungary to be stripped from its voting rights over rule of law concerns. That didn't happen then. You can expect 63 MEPs won't make it happen now, but certainly a real sign of the tensions, particularly as Hungary now has that rotating presidency of the European Council.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. Can hydrogen power large trucks better than electricity? We'll check out China's green energy transition.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you. All around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
What do we mean when we talk about the difference? The difference is in the detail, the background,
defense ministers from
the wider angle and perspective of every story. Wherever the story may be. CGTN. See the difference.
We are all connected. Across borders, across continents, connected by ideas, a shared humanity. Stay connected.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Robin Dwyer and me, Juliet Mann. The headlines again. In a sticky spot, the IMF's assessment of the global economy as world trade improves, but inflation remains a problem. US markets rally as confidence grows that a rate cut could be coming soon. And French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal offers to resign again, but will stay on in the thick of political deadlock.
China is the world's largest producer of electric cars, but electric batteries are less efficient in larger vehicles such as trucks, which need more power. Now, as part of its green energy transition, the country's set its sights on becoming a global leader in hydrogen technology. Our correspondent Michael Voss reports.
Hydrogen-powered trucks are now starting to roll off the production line in China. These vehicles are the first in the world to be fitted with 100-kilogram liquid hydrogen systems, giving them a range in excess of 1,000 kilometers. Given the size of the fuel tanks, growth is expected to concentrate on trucks and buses rather than cars. A new National Hydrogen Fuel Cell Testing Centre recently opened in Beijing, one of several around the country working on improvements in fuel cell systems, vehicles and hydrogen refuelling stations. This push for hydrogen has caught the attention of the United Nations, whose Assistant Secretary General recently toured some of the hydrogen facilities.
China for us is an amazing, very large demonstration project. If you can do it here and perfect the technology and the applications, this you can use anywhere.
China launched a hydrogen development plan in 2022, setting a goal to have 50,000 fuel cell vehicles on the road by 2025, along with 1,200 hydrogen refueling stations. China is the world's largest producer and consumer of hydrogen in the world. In 2020, it produced 33 million metric tons, predicted to jump to 37 million in 2030 and 97 million by 2050. China is also looking at incorporating self-drive capabilities into hydrogen-fueled vehicles. In this recent trial, a fully loaded self-driving truck successfully completed the automated 200-kilometer journey from Beijing to the port of Tianjin.
These places have devised policies and implemented strategies for intelligent, connected new energy vehicles. In future, this trial on the Beijing-Tianjin Expressway will be taken as a starting point for the gradual promotion of the initiative across the entire nation.
Much of the hydrogen currently produced in China is a byproduct of fossil fuel production. The Hydrogen Development Plan also sets targets for boosting green hydrogen by extracting it from water using solar energy and wind power. Michael Voss, CGTN.
Well, let's talk now to Kingsmill Bond, the energy strategist at the Rocky Mountain Institute. Good to see you. Welcome back to the programme. So I don't know if you could hear our report there, but we were talking about how China is the world's largest producer and consumer of hydrogen. How has the Chinese government supported that development of hydrogen energy?
So the Chinese government has been, above all, supporting the development of green hydrogen. And in fact, the really interesting story in hydrogen globally now is green hydrogen. To what degree you can electrolyze water, split it into hydrogen and oxygen, and get costs low enough. And actually, although your reporter didn't mention this, that this is where China is also actually leading. So it looks like certainly by the end of this decade, China will be producing green hydrogen at a price comparable with standard production of hydrogen. And that is a very, very exciting moment, because we've seen elsewhere in the energy transition, whenever you get cost parity, then you get growth up an S-curve.
So what are the challenges in making both green hydrogen and regular hydrogen, if you like? You talked about the extraction, but is it also in changing the whole infrastructure?
So the main challenge is you have to get cheap enough electricity, which, again, China's doing out west with its solar and wind farms. And then you have to get cheap enough electrolyzers to convert that electricity into hydrogen. And again, China has lower electrolyzer costs than other places in the world. So at RMI, we're very, very focused on China getting to 100 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity to produce around tons of green hydrogen by 2030 at a comparable cost with standard hydrogen. And when we get to that moment, as I say, the second challenge will be what your reporter was talking about, which is deploying hydrogen in different areas. And trucking is one area, green ammonia, green steel. These are other areas where you also need a lot of innovation. And again, China and many other places are also chasing after leadership in these areas.
So it sounds like China making strides in this area. How does what China is doing compare to what other countries are doing?
Well, the standard, as you know, the standard global playbook is that China, in the solar industry, the wind industry, the EV industry, the battery industry, has been able to develop enormous scale and drive costs down to a very low level. And once that low level of cost is achieved, then growth, it rolls out in China and indeed in other countries. And that's what we are starting to see now in the hydrogen space as well. China's actually deploying electrolyzers faster than other countries and getting costs down more rapidly than in other places. I mean, the game is not yet over. The battle is still being raged all over the world, but at the moment, China's doing it more rapidly than others, as you would kind of expect.
So what's the future for hydrogen? Do you think it's going to end up superseding other forms of energy, sit alongside it, or perhaps fall short of their potential?
Well, hydrogen is often described as the champagne of energy. That is to say, it's what you do for the most difficult areas. It's more expensive than other energy technologies, but it can be used in a wider variety of areas. So from our calculations, hydrogen will be needed for, let's say, the last 5 to 10% of the energy transition. It's really actually a 2040s story, but you nevertheless need to build for that 2040s story. The real story today, for what it's worth, is solar, wind, batteries and electrification. They're much cheaper, much easier, much better ways to solve problems, but it's highly likely we will need cheap hydrogen, and it's good that folks are doing it.
Kingsmill, great to talk to you today. Thank you very much for being on the programme. That's Kingsmill Bond from the Rocky Mountain Institute.
Thank you.
At least 6 people have been found dead at a hotel in the Thai capital, Bangkok. Authorities said all the victims were Vietnamese Americans. Police have dismissed earlier reports that they'd been killed in a shooting. The Thai Prime Minister has ordered an investigation into the deaths. Partial results in Rwanda's presidential election show Paul Kagame set to win a 4th term by a landslide. With 79% of votes counted, Kagame has won more than 99% overall and is expected to extend his 24 years in office with another 5-year term. At least 1 person has been shot dead and others wounded during ongoing protests in Kenya. Demonstrators were marching on the Electoral Commission's office in the western city of Kisumu when police fired into the air to break up the crowd. The region has seen some of the country's most violent protests in recent weeks as pressure intensifies on President William Ruto. The First Minister of Wales, Vaughan Gething, has announced that he will step down hours after 4 resignations from his government. Gething, who'd only been in the job for 4 months, was facing increased scrutiny for receiving a campaign donation from someone who'd been convicted of environmental offences. South Korean media are reporting what's said to be the highest-ranking defection from the DPRK since 2016. Ri Il-kyu, the senior diplomat based in Cuba, is said to have defected to the South last November, along with his wife and child. He reportedly flew from Cuba to Seoul. One small town in central China's Hainan province experienced nearly a year's worth of rain in a single day. The province has activated its emergency response with large areas underwater. Separately, Beijing temporarily shut numerous train lines in suburban areas on Tuesday morning after issuing an early warning for thunderstorms and flash floods.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. High hopes for China's women's hockey team looking for medals at the Paris Olympics.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
Unprecedented scenes that we saw. The clean-up operation is now well and truly underway.
Parts of southern Europe remain in a state of emergency.
Context gives meaning. People make history.
Far more than 1,000 people have come here today.
But authorities are still on high alert.
So now we've actually become the border on this road.
A complex world demands a comprehensive view.
But with the cleanup efforts more or less under control,
the economic impact is bound to ripple across the country.
There's plastic pollution everywhere.
Because the world today matters for your world tomorrow.
This is the living area of the crew.
The focus is firmly on future technologies.
Well, this is something completely different.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe.
China's women's hockey team hopes to defy its world ranking in Paris and bring home a medal from the Olympic Games.
The world #8 team face a tough group stage before the knockout rounds. Our correspondent Li Jianhua reports.
Stake in hand, dreams on the field. That's the spirit of field hockey. The China women's national field hockey team are undergoing tactical drills and fine-tuning their strategies as they inch closer to their Olympic dreams.
Two closely matched teams who know each other.
This is the last game they played in the United Kingdom against Germany a month before the Olympics, a win for China. But in the International Hockey Federation's global rankings, the Chinese team are still 5 places behind Germany, the world's #3. China will meet Germany again in Paris, as well as Belgium, Japan, France and the defending champions, the Netherlands. Only the top 4 can proceed to the quarterfinals.
We've got the difficult pool. We've definitely got the harder pool from both pools. The pools were made when we were in the 12th position. So we've got to win against France and Japan, and that'll put us through to the quarters.
At the 2023 Asian Games, the Chinese team won the gold medal and secured a berth at the Paris Olympics, and they hope to stand on the podium this time.
I think every game is important. We have to try our best to get more points in every game. We need to compete to get into the quarterfinals. And we need to be ready for possible rematches. The more points we get, the better.
We feel very hopeful that we can achieve a very good result this time. We like to aim higher and stand on the podium. We have a strategy of 10 basic points in our training. The gist is we need to keep moving fast and make more effective passes. When entering the arc area, we must have a very clear goal. We either shoot or get a short corner.
The China women's national hockey team was founded in 1986. The team's best performance at the Olympics was in 2008, when they took silver. Li Jianhua, CGTN, London.
The mayor of one of the districts in Paris says the city wants to leave a cultural legacy to the world.
He's been talking to CGTN's Zhao Yunfei.
Paris bid for the 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games is backed by our desire to host ecologically friendly games. The idea is for the games to consume less energy and leave as little carbon footprint as possible. That was the original plan for our games. Very little new infrastructure was built for the games. That perhaps is the biggest difference between our games and other editions of the games. What's at stake for us here is what we leave behind and the legacy of these games. For instance, here in the 17th arrondissement, we refurbished the sports halls so that the boxer teams could train there. The Olympic Games allowed us to update and refurbish much of our existing equipment. This equipment can be utilized by Parisians daily, long after the Olympics is over, and the facilities can help train future champions.
There are also many cooperation between Beijing and Paris in terms of Olympics underway, and also Beijing 2008 and Beijing 2022. Those are quite successful games with much legacies. What kind of legacies would Paris want to leave to the world?
Ce que la candidature de Paris veut montrer.
What Paris wants to show is it's possible to hold games in a historic city. Paris is a city that showcases a lot of history, and we're hosting the games right at the heart of the city. That is extraordinary. We hope the opening ceremony will allow the entire world to rediscover Paris and fall in love with Paris.
Athletes in Iraq are also making final preparations for the Summer Games. The country only has a small number of competitors, but there are hopes that Paris can serve as a springboard for glory. Our correspondent William Densler reports from Baghdad.
There are a lot of expectations on these young shoulders. Ali Yasser's just 20 years old and is an Asian Junior Championship gold medalist. Later this month, he'll be Iraq's flag bearer at the Paris Olympics.
Thanks to God, I've made a lot of achievements in World Champions, and after nominating me, they said, deservedly, you hold the flag for Iraq's pride.
It was 49 degrees Celsius when we met Ali and his team. A power cut during the training session made conditions even tougher. There's a hope that a strong performance in Paris can raise the sport's profile here and bring with it more investment.
It'll cause a ripple effect to the team, strategists, because it's not just about the framework, but the actual infrastructure after the Olympics. This is just an incentive, so we can say Ali is the reason to advance that.
Iraq's only Olympic medal came in weightlifting. It was bronze back in 1960. The country hopes to see a return to the podium in Paris.
Apart from the football team, Ali is one of just a handful of athletes representing Iraq at this year's Olympic Games. Despite that pressure, he says he's happy to carry the hopes of a nation on his back.
The national football team's Gulf Cup victory last year sparked huge celebrations. And Iraq's qualification for this year's Olympics has provided more reason for cheer, having missed out 4 years ago.
We have many good players, young players, and those will defend, Iraqi colours in this Olympic Games.
The president of the Iraqi Olympic Committee, Akil Muftin, says plans are well underway to be even better represented in the 2028 Los Angeles Games. He says a coordinated approach is needed to capitalise on the nation's strengths and passions to generate success in the future.
In the Middle East, there are several gyms on every street to advance the athlete's strength, in addition to the fact that they are always available for play. These ideas could help build a strong future for sport.
Nearly 60% of Iraq's population is under the age of 25. And it's a big talent pool, but the task will be in identifying and developing athletes to ensure they make a splash at the Olympic level. William Denslow, CGTN, Baghdad.
China's Olympic rowing team has been training in northeast China. They say their biggest competition at the Games is Team GB and the Netherlands. CGTN's Wu Bin reports.
Right on the Huanghe River of Shenyang, the capital city of northeast China's Liaoning province, China's rowing team is training really hard. Former Asian Games gold medalist, male rower Liu Zhiyu will be partnering with Adilijiang Sulitan from China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region for the men's double sculls at the Paris Olympics. It's the first time for 24-year-old Adilijiang to compete in the Olympics.
I would say to myself that this is a very good opportunity. I just turned 24 and I want to give it my best shot.
The previous best for the men's double sculls was the bronze medal at the Tokyo Olympics. And this time, their goal is to stand on the awarding podium.
We prepared quite well in Shenyang, and I recovered quite well from my back injuries, and both of us practiced very hard.
in a fortnight's time. If we can make it to the final, I think we have a good chance of standing on the awards podium.
Among the athletes, 4 girls are favorites for a medal at the Paris Olympics. They're in the women's quadruple sculls event and have been rowing together for 6 years. Their best result was at the Tokyo Olympics 3 years ago, claiming the gold medal with 6 minutes and 5.13 seconds, a new world record. Their goal this time is to defend the championship, but there are many challenges.
From Tokyo to Paris, the 4 of us now actually face more difficulties. First, we are getting older and we have to cope more with injuries. But on the other hand, we are also more calm and stable.
We'll be able to resist pressure better. After all, we've been working together for so long. Whether it's racing or training, as long as we're on the same boat, we'll trust each other.
China's rowing team is a new rising star, while traditionally Europe has had strong teams. For the girls, the rivalries are quite clear. Team UK and Team Holland are the biggest threats to their crown.
We will put more focus on our opponents. That's because now a lot of international teams are watching us and trying to figure out how to surpass us. And opponents are also getting stronger.
The chances of winning or losing are 50-50. We don't know the result until the last minute. So all we can do is to try our best every day and give our best shot at the games.
China's rowing team will be heading towards Paris about a week before the opening of the Olympics. They'll be there to adjust to the local rivers and train for the games. The finals of women's quadruple sculls, China's championship defending event, will be held on July 31st. We'll be CGTN, Shenyang, Liaoning Province.
The headlines again. In a sticky spot, the IMF's assessment of the global economy as world trade improves, but inflation remains a problem.
US markets rally as confidence grows that a rate cut could be coming soon.
And French President Emmanuel Macron has accepted the resignation of Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, but he will stay on for now in the thick of political deadlock.
That's it for Global Business Europe. Thanks for watching.
Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all of the team here in London, goodbye.